How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is Deck Ready, my channel all about Steam hardware. I hope you are having a great week playing a ton of video games. In today's video, we've got 3 topics to cover, starting out with the fact that a lot of developers are targeting the Steam Deck in the future. So if you were worried about the Steam Machine being the main focus, the Steam Deck is not being forgotten. After that, we're going to talk about how a great storefront that isn't Steam is getting a native Linux version soon. And finally, I haven't checked in on the top 10 most played games on Steam Deck in a while. They just put out the January numbers, so I figured I'd read off the list to maybe give you some new games to play. Before I jump into the first topic, it would really help me out if you subscribe to the channel and set your notifications to all. But with the intro out of the way, let's start talking about game developers. So the Game Developers Conference just wrapped up, and every year they do a state of the industry report where they survey everyone they can talk to who shows up at the event. And this year they talked to 2,300 developers, which is a lot of developers. So out of those 2,300 developers that were surveyed, 40% of them said that the Steam Deck is the platform that they're the most interested in developing for. And it's not just PC. They specifically pointed out that they want to develop for the Steam Deck. That puts it at third on the list, which is tied with the PS5 and PS5 Pro. And I just got to point out that it's kind of crazy that Steam Deck doesn't get lumped in with PC as a whole, but PS5 Pro gets lumped in with PS5. You have to do boutique optimization for PS5 Pro and use PSSR. It has different technology, but I'm assuming that's that Sony money at play. I'm joking. And interestingly, that 40% number puts it 1 percentage point ahead of the Nintendo Switch 2. So 39% of the developers said that the Switch 2 is the platform that they're most interested in developing for. I would guess that's because even though the Switch 2 sold a lot of units, I think they're at like 30 million already, they aren't moving a lot of copies of games. Like Mario Kart World obviously sold a lot of copies because they bundled it in with the Switch 2 and you could buy it at a discount if you got the bundle. And I'm sure some other games like DK Bonanza or the Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 remaster sold a lot of copies, but it turns out people aren't really showing up for brand new games either. Like I'm a huge Metroid fan and I skipped Metroid Prime 4 and I was really excited for that game, but when you see a Nintendo game getting 7s and 8s, you're like, maybe I'll stay away from that because, you know, as far as review scores go, Nintendo gets overinflated a lot by at least 2 points. So like if you see a 7 or 8, you're like, that's probably not worth playing. That's at least how I read it, and that's why I didn't feel like spending $70 on Metroid Prime 4. So when you take that into account, it makes a lot of sense that developers who are targeting Steam also want to target the Steam Deck, because as we've seen through a lot of data that's been released over the past few years, people who buy the Steam Deck tend to play a lot of games on it. They spend a lot of hours playing on the Steam Deck. So if you port your game and make sure that it works well on the Steam Deck, you're generally rewarded for it, right? Like I do a lot of research to find any game, not stuff I'm necessarily the most interested in. But if a developer goes out of their way to make sure their game is optimized at launch for the Steam Deck, chances are I will see it and you'll hear about it on this channel, because I like supporting developers who go out of their way to support my preferred platform, which is the Steam Deck. So like we're a dedicated group of people who are willing to spend money on games, and developers are noticing that and they like the Steam Deck too. So they're like, hey, I'll put a little extra time, money, and energy into making sure my game works on Steam Deck. So that 40% number makes a lot of sense to me. And 30% of the developers who were surveyed are already making their games for the Steam Deck. So there's 10% more who are looking at it as their preferred platform going forward for games they're currently working on to release in the future. So overall, I think the situation is great for the Steam Deck, because I think there's a little bit of apprehension out there that like maybe when the Steam Machine comes out and the launch window's passed, that they'll focus on that entirely for a while, or that and the Steam frame, and kind of forget about the Steam Deck. This shows that they can't really afford to forget about the Steam Deck. And in terms of like looking forward to the Steam Deck 2, that makes even more sense to make now, because developers are excited to make games for the Steam Deck platform and people are excited to buy games on it. It's kind of like the dream scenario. Like you're basically guaranteed a big group of people will show up to buy your hardware. And on top of that, developers will line up to support it. It's just so funny seeing stuff like this when every other day there's articles coming out saying, don't buy the aging Steam Deck, buy this Z1 Extreme equipped device that, you know, is 3 times the price and isn't going to get support and is basically end of life already. And you have to buy it open box to get a decent price on it. Go through all that trouble to get a little bit more performance instead of buying the device that developers are supporting, people really enjoy using, has a huge community already, and people generally love. Like for example, they also included the ROG Ally platform, and that only got 7% when they were asked what your preferred platform is. 7% versus 40% said that the ROG Ally platform is their preferred platform. And I'm not taking away from the ROG Ally. I really like PC handhelds as a whole, but it really does put things into perspective, because when you talk about the Steam Deck, someone is always right there showing up being like, the Steam Deck only sold 5 million units, whereas the Switch 2 sold 30 million. But when you have those numbers, it doesn't really matter if people aren't showing up to buy games. And most importantly, if developers aren't excited to develop for it. Like, Nintendo has a whole crazy situation going on behind the scenes where developers are like, hey, send us dev units. And Nintendo's like, no, develop for the Switch 1 because the game will run better on the Switch 2. It's backwards compatible. That's a bad situation that they need to figure out. But if they don't figure it out, it's fine because we'll all be enjoying our games on the Steam Deck. So overall, things are looking good. I love the Steam Deck. I'll never forget about it. It's my all-time favorite console ever. So as much as I know I'm going to love the Steam Machine and the Steam Frame, the Steam Deck's always going to have a really special place in my heart. So I'm glad to see developers love it too and are continuing to develop for it going forward. But that brings me to the second news story of today's video, which is a new storefront that people actually like is coming to Linux natively, which means it'll work on the Steam Deck and Steam Machine. And you've probably already guessed which one I'm talking about because you're like, it's not EA, it's not Ubisoft. Oh, it's GOG, right? Like, GOG is getting a native Linux app in the near future, which is good because in the world of PC storefronts, I feel like the only two that people generally like are Steam and GOG, and they both serve completely different audiences. Like, I think it's fair criticism to say that while it is good, you can buy a lot of old games on Steam, there's not a lot of enforcement in terms of like saying, hey, if you're selling an older game, you have to make sure it works. Like, to their credit, Capcom did eventually remove games from Windows Live from Resident Evil 5, but for the vast majority of the Steam Deck's lifecycle so far, you had to download separate files and drag them into folders to get that game to boot up because it was looking for games for Windows Live, which doesn't exist anymore. And for other games that use that software, like Operation Raccoon City, they deemed that it wasn't even worth taking games for Windows Live out and they took them off the store. Whereas GOG goes through the work to not only make sure those games will run on modern hardware, but they also put in a little extra work to make sure it's an optimal experience. My shining example of this, of course, is the original 3 Resident Evils. They put really good versions of the PC ports out on GOG of those games, and that's my preferred way to play Resident Evil 2 and 3. And Resident Evil 1's remake is so good that I honestly never really enjoyed going back and playing the original. I played it as a kid. I played it on the Nintendo DS. The remake from GameCube that got ported up to Steam is perfect. It's like literally the perfect remake, on par with RE2 remake and RE4 remake. So I don't need to play the original, but Resident Evil 2 has so much charm that I love going back and just doing run-throughs of it because it's such a short experience if you know what you're doing. And then Resident Evil 3 feels like a DLC for it. So getting those ported over to PC and having them look so crisp and clean and run so well on that platform is excellent. Up until now, the way that you would get GOG games working would be to use Heroic Game Launcher or Lutris. Lutris is always the one that I can never figure out. I tried getting Diablo 3 running on it. I was able to do it, but it took so long that it kind of just ruined the experience for me. Heroic Game Launcher is just so much simpler. You download the app, you log into GOG, your entire library populates, you download the game, you tell it what Wine version to use or Proton version, and then you click Add to Steam. It adds the games to Steam with art. It's really hard to get around that experience. So even if this app does come to Linux and it turns out crappy, you can just kind of wait it out and just use Heroic Game Launcher in the meantime. But having a native Linux app for GOG is a huge step forward because that is, generally speaking, a good platform. Apparently they have a lot of controversy right now because their storefront is using AI art and they're hiring people for AI or something like that. I looked into it. I can't really figure out why people are upset because they're not even talking about what they're doing with it. But if that does turn out to be bad, I'll talk about it in the future. Another update on GOG is that one of the people who made it at CD Projekt Red left CD Projekt Red and bought GOG so it can be a standalone company. And they're kind of taking potshots at Steam, criticizing them for their support of old games. I don't know why there's animosity there. Like, you can be good for classic games and Steam can be good for newer games, and people will generally use both storefronts. Like, if GOG has ambitions to make their storefront a competitor to Steam, I'm fine with that because it'll only result in Steam being better. But like, they have a lot of work to do, and the fact that the vast majority of the games on GOG are DRM free, I feel like is going to be a problem for any new game because, you know, Capcom loves shipping games with Denuvo. They just took it out of Resident Evil 4 Remake, and that, based on GOG's track record, wouldn't necessarily fly. So that game wouldn't show up at launch on GOG with their current rule set. So I don't know. I think it's good overall that GOG is coming to Linux. I think it's weird that they're taking shots at Steam because theoretically those two companies should be shaking hands. You know, like people like them both. That's really hard to achieve on the PC platform. Because as we've seen, Epic Games and every other storefront have had a really tough go at it when it comes to getting popularity, if at all. So that covers the two main topics of today's video. For the third one to round the video out, let's talk about the top 10 most played games on Steam Deck in January, starting out with number 1, Megabonk. My buddy Jake Baldino has been trying to get me to play this game. I bought it, I just haven't had time to start it up because I get addicted to these games. Like when Vampire Survivors added their Castlevania DLC, I had it on my Steam Deck, I had it on my main PC, I had it on my phone, I was playing it at the gym. It just takes over my entire life. So like when I have some time off, like over the summer or something like that, then I think I'll get into Megabonk because it seems like it just keeps getting better, but people are hooked on this game, so I'm not surprised to see it at number 1. Number 2 on the list is Stardew Valley. This game always makes me laugh because there is a not insignificant number of my friends, girlfriends, and wives who got Steam Decks just to play Stardew Valley on it. I guess this game is like Animal Crossing, but with a lot more systems. People love this game. It's just not my type of game. So like, I respect it. I'm just never going to play it, but it makes a lot of sense because it runs incredibly well on the Steam Deck and it gets an insane amount of battery life and, you know, it's awesome. Number 3 is Baldur's Gate 3. I don't think this is ever going to leave the top 10. I just got to be honest with you guys. I gave this game an honest shot. I put around 20 hours into it. I just don't like it. I'm not a big fan of CRPGs like this. I'm also not a big fan of fantasy. I thought my Stranger Things fandom and hype would get me really interested in it because it was D&D, which linked it to the show. It kind of worked for a little bit. I really liked the art design. I liked exploring dungeons. I just don't like the whole dice roll thing where it's like I equip my character, I get all these spells going, and even then you still have to save scum through a lot of fights. Just not my preferred game, but like I gave it an honest shot and I can see why it's popular. Number 4 is Hades 2. This game has been moving its way up the list since its 1.0 release. This game is awesome. They just took everything about Hades 1 and made it better. I really enjoy it. Thanks to one of you guys who bought it off my wish list for me for Christmas. It was on my wish list because it was another one of those games that I knew I would get addicted to, so you caused another addiction. Thank you. Number 4 on the list is Fallout 4. I love this game. I know a lot of people hate it. I love Far Harbor. I love Nuka World. I just like exploring in it. I still use the original save I started back when it came out. I basically have every perk in the game. I only use a few mods to add real world guns into it, like the 1911 and stuff like that, but the Commonwealth is a great map to explore. I love just entering buildings, cleaning out the loot, getting more ammo, crafting, doing everything you can do in this game. And playing Fallout 76 and building up the camp system got me to interact with the settlement system in Fallout 4, and it's an awesome game. I don't know why everyone hates it. I really like it and it runs well on the Steam Deck. What more could you ask for? Slay the Spires at number 6. I was hooked on this game when it came to iPhone. When I had a normal job, I was playing it at work all the time. It is so good. Once you finally beat it, you feel so smart. Like any game that uses cards that you're able to get ahead in just makes me feel so smart when I do get ahead. I love this game and I'm glad to see it sticking around. I don't know if their plans are to make a Slay the Spire 2 or something like that, but this is another one of those games that's perfect for the Steam Deck because, you know, it's going to sit battery life and you can just get engrossed in it. You can curl up on the couch and enjoy it. So that makes sense that it's this high on the list. Number 7 is Ball X Pit. Covers all the same things I've already talked about. You get great battery life. It's a cool addictive game that can be played on the Steam Deck. It's a roguelite. Like, it makes a lot of sense why it's up there. I think it's good. I need more time to sink into it. I can only handle so many addictive games at once, and Vampire Survivors is a hard addiction to break, guys. I promise. Number 9 is Arc Raiders. It's nice to have a really good popular multiplayer game that works well on the Steam Deck, and it does prove that Unreal Engine 5 games can run well, so more developers should take note and figure out what Embark did to figure this game out, because it shouldn't work as well as it does on the Steam Deck, but it does. I love this game. I don't know why it didn't click with me at launch, but now I'm addicted to it, but I don't see that addiction going away anytime soon. And finally, number 10 is Cult of the Lamb. I'll never forget, like, when I started this channel was right around the time that game came out, and it had this annoying issue where every 10 seconds on the dot, you'd see a really big stutter, and I was like begging the developers on Twitter. I was like, please fix your game, make the stutter go away. And then they finally did. I got hooked on it. I beat it. I guess it got a new expansion that's really good, so I'm definitely going back to this one. So yeah, that's the top 10 games being played on Steam Deck for January. A lot of old games, a lot of new games. Things are healthy in the SteamOS world. Hopefully we get the Steam hardware release date and price soon, but until then, you've got a lot of games to play, so get to it. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you in today's video. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching and shape on.